Hello and welcome to day 99 of 100 Days of Tonalism. This is your painter in residence, M. Francis McCarthy, and the study that I've done today is October by George Inness. If you've been following the blog or the videos on YouTube in this series, you'll know that Inness has factored very greatly in what we've been doing here, and he's the greatest. This is the last Inness in the series, and the one we're going to be doing tomorrow is actually not an artist I'm even familiar with, so that'll be interesting. When we've been getting up to Inness posts, I've been reading from the book George Inness by Nikolai Sikorsky Jr., and it's out of print, but I highly recommend picking it up. You can get it for a good price. He's written about this painting in his book. I'm on page 98. October, painted in 1886. By the way, 1886, maybe 5 years from when Inness died, something like that, is an example of the synthesis that Inness accomplished. It is completely believable as nature with space and depth, atmosphere and substance, recognizable objects and familiar effects. Much of its beauty is the beauty of a natural condition accurately depicted, but much of its beauty and most of its visual intelligibility is formal, not natural. Inness did not see and then simply describe the virtually exact horizontal and vertical symmetries that structure the painting and order its parts. He did not see and transcribe the parallelisms, the subtly measured intervals, and the carefully placed accents that play against and vary that structural order. They come from aesthetic sensibility, visual thought, and internal requirements of art, not from observation and transcription. And this is very important. This is one of the main things that's really differentiating tonalism from a lot of the painting you see today, which is heavily reliant on photography. And really, the best of it's just going to translate or transcribe photography. But that's a trap that I've talked about quite a bit on the blog and in my previous blogs. To continue on page 98 here, there is no attempt to hide the fact that October is a painting, that it is made of pigment shaped by human agency. To whatever degree it is synthetic in properties of its structure, it is also always possible to see that a hand and a brush, animated by pleasure, in the beauty of paint itself and the process of applying it, have moved pigment on the canvas's surface. The movement of the brush, its pace and conviction, rhythm and direction is a record of the artist's feelings about what he is painting. Properties of nature, art, and human feeling concur in this painting of 1886 as they had not done before in Inness's art, each preserving its own purity yet with greater unity and wholeness. That is what Inness's contemporaries noticed when in the 1880s they began describing his style as synthetic. This may have been the result of self-assurance and technical mastery that came with maturity. Inness was 60 years old in 1885. It may have been the expression of an understanding deepened and concentrated by the experience of a lifetime, the perception of the essential and disregard for the incidental and superficial that marks the late style of the relatively few artists whose creative powers survive intact to their later years. But stylistic synthesis was not the only natural development of age. On the contrary, it was a condition of artistic perfection that Inness foresaw and described in theory significantly before it made its appearance in practice. In other words, he was working very hard towards this his whole life, at least from his initial introduction to the Barbizon school in the 50s, 1850s or so, up until this is going to be 35 years later. Inness was not a theoretician in the usual sense. He was entirely too impulsive for sustained, systematic thought and too explosive for orderly, coherent discourse. But, as everyone who knew him was aware, few American artists were as thoughtful, as intellectually active, and few devoted as much time and effort to theoretical speculation. Quote, "His mind," said Eliot Dangerfield, who was close to Inness during the last decade of his life, was ever delving into or solving problems connected with what he called the principles of painting, unquote. Inness wrote copiously. He mentioned writing piles of manuscript on a favorable subject, And Schuyler said he wrote voluminously and left masses of manuscript, which Schuyler described as theological and spiritualistic rhapsodies and mysteries in prose and in verse. Well, if you've tried to read Inness's stuff, it's pretty dense. He's not he's a genius, but he's not a person that specializes very much at making his writing terribly clear to lay people, or even to people that are painters. But he's a genius. He's awesome. And thanks so much for hanging out with me on this last Inness of 100 Days of Tonalism. If you'd like to see more of my tonalist painting, go to landscapepainter.co.nz, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 100. Meanwhile, take good care and stay out